My fiancée said she deserved half of my business, despite never working a day in her life. She laughed. That's just how marriage works, babe, so I played along. This morning, she showed up to our divorce hearing expecting a payday. Then the judge read the prenup. Now she's screaming that I tricked her. I'm Jackson, 34, self-made entrepreneur, owner of a thriving logistics company I built from scratch. No loans, no trust fund, just years of grinding, making smart investments, and putting in 16-hour workdays while everyone else was partying. By the time I hit 30, I had a multi-million-dollar business and a comfortable life. I wasn't flashy, no Lambos, no mansions, but I had financial security most people only dream of. Then came Mona. Mona was everything you'd expect from someone who grew up rich. She came from old money, private schools, ski trips in Aspen, and a wardrobe full of designer handbags she didn't pay for. She had a degree in something vague and artsy, but never worked a real job beyond a short-lived passion project at a friend's boutique. And yet, she carried herself like she was the CEO of the world. We met at a charity gala, one I was invited to by a client, and she was there because, well, that's what rich socialites do. I won't lie, Mona was stunning. The kind of woman who turned heads when she walked into a room. She was charming, sophisticated, and had this effortless confidence that made you feel like she actually saw you. At first, I thought I'd hit the jackpot. She wasn't just some party girl. She had ambition. She talked about wanting to start a business, to do something meaningful. She said she admired my work ethic, that she loved how driven I was. It felt good, like she respected what I built. For the first year, things were great. She was thoughtful, always planning little romantic surprises, hyping me up when business got tough, telling me how she admired my success. We traveled, we laughed, we talked about the future. She made me believe we were a team. And then, the little things started. It was subtle at first. She started making offhand comments like, "Once we're married, we should get a vacation house. You can afford it, right?" She'd casually joke, "I don't know why you stress about work so much. Just hire more people. You're rich." She stopped talking about starting a business and instead started mentioning how she could help with mine, despite having zero experience. At the time, I brushed it off. I figured she was just adjusting to the idea of being with someone who worked for their money instead of being handed it. But I should have paid more attention. The first real red flag came when we got engaged. We were celebrating with champagne and she giggled, clinking her glass against mine. "Can you believe it? We'll be partners in everything now, including your business." I laughed, thinking she was joking. She wasn't. I remember saying, "Well, not exactly. My company is mine. Marriage doesn't change that." She gave me this look, half amused, half exasperated, like I was a child who didn't understand how the world worked. "Babe, that's literally what marriage is. What's yours is mine, what's mine is yours." I told her, "That's not how businesses work, Mona." She waved me off, laughing. "Whatever, we'll figure it out." I should have pressed harder then. I should have seen the entitlement for what it was. But I was in love, and I still thought she was mostly joking. Then came the behavior shift. Suddenly Mona started acting like she already owned my success. She'd introduce me to people as, "My fiancé, Jackson, he owns a logistics company." Well, technically we do. She started spending money like crazy, assuming it didn't matter. Designer bags, spa weekends, ridiculous $300 brunches with her friends, money that she assumed was just an endless supply. One day, she outright asked, "Why isn't my name on any of the business documents?" That's when the alarms started blaring in my head. I told her flat out, "Because it's my business. You had nothing to do with building it." She pouted, crossing her arms. "Yeah, but once we're married, that changes. I deserve a say, Jackson." I asked her, "Why?" She blinked at me, confused, like I had just asked why the sky was blue. Then she laughed, "Because that's just how marriage works, babe." That sentence? That was the moment I knew. This wasn't a misunderstanding. Mona fully believed that simply marrying me entitled her to half of everything I built. I smiled at her, played it cool, and right then and there I decided if she wanted to play the entitled wife, I'd let her. But on my terms. And that, my friends, is how the most satisfying revenge I've ever pulled off began. The moment Mona laughed and said, "That's just how marriage works, babe," something in me shifted. I didn't react. I didn't argue. I just let it slide. Because at that moment, I realized something. Mona wasn't joking. She fully believed that by simply marrying me, she was entitled to half of everything I built from scratch. And if that's what she thought, I'd let her believe it. Because when someone thinks they've already won, they get lazy. They get sloppy. And Mona was about to get very, very sloppy. A few weeks after our engagement, the real pressure started. Mona started casually, then not so casually, bringing up how we should start combining things. Why don't we just get a joint bank account? It'll make things so much easier. You should add me as a co-owner on the business account. What if something happens to you? It's weird that our house is only in your name. We're getting married, Jackson. It should be ours. At first, she framed it all as convenience. Just normal, everyday couple stuff. But there was something off about the way she kept pushing. Because the thing is, Mona never showed any interest in finances before. She never asked about my accounts. She never cared about my business structure. She didn't even know the difference between revenue and profit. But suddenly, she wanted to know everything. And the more she pushed, the calmer I stayed, because I already had a plan. One day, completely out of the blue, Mona quit her hobby job. Now, to be clear, this wasn't a real job. It was something her parents had set up for her, a glorified creative consultant role at some boutique where she barely showed up. So when she quit, I was surprised. Wait, what? Why? I asked, trying to sound neutral. She just smiled. I don't need to work, babe. We're getting married. That was it. No discussion. No concern. Just a casual expectation that I would be footing the bill for everything from now on. She started spending money like she had an unlimited credit line, except it wasn't her money. $2,500 on a girls' weekend in Miami. A new engagement ring upgrade because she decided the one I proposed with wasn't big enough for someone with her lifestyle. Luxury spa days where she and her friends would get facials, massages, and whatever the hell a gold-infused body wrap is. And every time I even hesitated to approve of her spending, she'd pout and say something like, "Well, it's not like this is just your money anymore. We're getting married, Jackson. It's ours." Again, I didn't argue, because the deeper she sunk into this delusion, the better my plan was working. It wasn't just me noticing the shift. One night, I was out grabbing drinks with my friend Evan, one of my oldest friends, the kind of guy who's seen me at my lowest. We were just catching up when he suddenly leaned in, lowering his voice. "Man, I gotta ask, are you sure about Mona?" I raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" Evan hesitated. Then he pulled out his phone, scrolling until he found something and handed it to me. It was a screenshot, a message from Mona to his girlfriend, Sophie. "Girl, I don't know how you do it. I could never be with a man who makes less than me. Lucky for me, Jackson is loaded, so I'll never have to worry about that. LOL." I stared at the message. I knew Mona had an entitled mindset, but seeing it spelled out so blatantly, that hit different. I exhaled. "How long ago was this?" "A couple months ago," Evan said. "Sophie didn't want to stir shit, but she thought you should know. And honestly, I've been noticing things too. The way she talks about your business, man, it's weird. Like she already thinks it's hers." I nodded, keeping my expression unreadable. Because this was exactly the confirmation I needed. I looked up at Evan and said, "Yeah, I'm sure about her." I could see the worry flash across his face. But what he didn't know, what no one knew, was that I wasn't just sure about Mona. I was sure about what I was about to do to her. After that, I started setting things in motion. I met with my lawyer and drafted a prenup so airtight it would survive a nuclear apocalypse. I quietly moved assets around, legally of course, making sure my inheritance and personal savings were separate and untouchable. I kept playing dumb, letting Mona think she was in complete control. And then, when the moment was right, I brought up the prenup. Now this was the part I was worried about. Some women fight tooth and nail over prenups. But Mona? She didn't even read it. She just waved it off, laughing. "Oh my God, babe, you think I care about a piece of paper? Whatever, just tell me where to sign." And just like that, she signed away every single thing she thought she was about to take from me. Mona's confidence was something to behold. After she signed the prenup without a second glance, I expected her to bring it up again, to question some of the clauses, or at least pretend to care about what she had just agreed to. But she never did. Instead, she kept spending like a woman who had already won the lottery. She never asked what was in the prenup, never requested a copy, never even mentioned it again. It was as if, in her mind, the mere act of marriage overruled whatever meaningless document she had signed. And I let her believe that. Because people who think they've already won, they don't pay attention. The last straw, the moment that erased any lingering guilt I had, came about a month before the wedding. I overheard Mona on the phone with a friend, talking in that smug, careless tone she used when she thought she was untouchable. Honestly, it's kind of hilarious. Jackson thinks he's being all smart with this prenup. It's not even a big deal. He wanted a prenup? Fine, I signed it. Doesn't even matter. Once we're married, it's all ours. My jaw tightened. Her friend must have asked something because Mona chuckled and continued. What? You think I actually read it? Babe, it's a prenup, not a contract that actually means anything. Jackson's business, his investments, all of it. Marriage overrules that. I just have to stick it out for a little while. I could hear the grin in her voice when she added, "That's just how marriage works." I felt a cold, almost clinical sense of satisfaction settle over me. I should have been furious. Instead, I was calm. Because Mona had just confirmed, beyond any doubt, that she had absolutely no idea what she had signed. She truly believed that once the wedding happened, the prenup became meaningless, that all she had to do was wait out the marriage long enough to guarantee herself a massive payday. And that meant she had just sealed her own fate. I stepped into the living room, making my presence known. Mona looked up, momentarily startled but recovered quickly. "Hey babe, didn't hear you come in." I leaned against the doorway, crossing my arms. "Who were you talking to?" "Oh, just a friend from college," she said smoothly, flipping her hair over her shoulder. "We were catching up," I nodded slowly. "You mentioned something about the prenup. Anything I should know?" For half a second I saw it. A flicker of panic. The tiniest hesitation. Then she smiled like I was an idiot. "Oh my God, Jackson, it's just girl talk. You know how it is." I tilted my head. "Do I?" She laughed, but this time it was forced. "You're not seriously worried about a stupid prenup, are you?" I shrugged, walking over to the couch and sitting down across from her. "Humor me." Mona let out an exaggerated sigh, rolling her eyes like I was exhausting her. "Jackson, we're about to get married. This legal mumbo-jumbo doesn't even matter." I kept my face unreadable. "So you never actually read it, did you?" That made her pause. I watched her brain work through it, trying to decide whether to admit it or double down. "Of course I did," she finally said, waving her hand. "I just didn't care because, it's not enforceable anyway." I raised an eyebrow. "Not enforceable," she scoffed. "Yeah, I mean, worst case scenario, I can challenge it. Courts throw out prenups all the time." I leaned forward slightly. "On what grounds?" She hesitated. I could see the moment she realized she didn't actually know. Her face hardened. "Look, Jackson, this is getting ridiculous. Why are we even talking about this? Are you seriously going to act like we're not about to be husband and wife? What's yours is mine." I smiled. And in that moment, I think something deep in her gut told her she had just made a mistake. But she had no idea how big of a mistake it really was. That night, after Mona went to bed, I sat in my office, reviewing everything one last time. I had already known she hadn't read the prenup. But now, I knew why. Mona had lived her entire life in a world without consequences. A world where problems were smoothed over with money, where her parents had always bailed her out, where contracts were just formalities, where she never had to fight for anything because she had never needed to. She had never lost. So it never even occurred to her that she could, and that was the one fatal flaw in her plan. Because Mona had spent the last few months laughing behind my back, thinking she had outmaneuvered me. But the truth? She was walking into a trap that she had built with her own arrogance. And in just a few weeks, she was going to find out exactly what that felt like. A week before the wedding, I suggested we go over some final details. I acted casual, like I was just checking boxes before the big day. I even smiled when I brought up the prenup again. "We should go over it, just so we're both clear." "Mona?" She rolled her eyes. "Jackson, we already did this, right?" I agreed. "But I just want to make sure you don't feel pressured or anything. You know, since a judge will ask about that if this ever comes up in court." Her lips twitched, half amusement, half impatience. "Babe, you're overthinking. It's a prenup. It's just a piece of paper." I nodded. "Exactly, just a piece of paper." I watched her closely, waiting for any sign that she might take this seriously. That maybe, just maybe, she'd finally realize she should actually read it. But Mona? She just sighed, pulled out a pen, and signed it again. Didn't even skim the first page. That was the moment I knew, without a doubt, she was done. Because here's the thing about airtight prenups. She wasn't getting a cent from my business. She wasn't getting spousal support. If she contested it, she'd have to pay my legal fees. And best of all, there was a clause that financially punished her if she initiated the divorce. Meaning, if she pulled the stick around for a year and take half move she had been planning, it would cost her. The wedding itself was picture perfect, at least on the surface. Mona wore a custom designer gown, dripping in diamonds she had convinced me to buy. She smiled for the cameras, playing the role of the adoring wife. To anyone watching, we were the perfect couple. But behind the scenes, I was just watching the countdown clock on her delusion. Mona spent those first few weeks of marriage like a queen who had just claimed her kingdom. She upgraded to first-class flights without asking. She remodeled the guest house, turning it into a personal spa. She shopped like she was training for the Olympics, blowing through thousands on handbags and jewelry. And each time I hesitated, she'd tilt her head and smile. "Babe, we're married. What's yours is mine." Each time I nodded and said, "Of course." Because the more she believed she had control, the harder the fall was going to be. A month into the marriage, Mona decided to push her luck. She waltzed into my office one afternoon, dropping a stack of papers on my desk. "I talked to a lawyer," she announced, all confidence. "We should put my name on the business, just for legal protection." I looked at her, raising an eyebrow. "Legal protection?" She nodded, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. "Yeah, babe. You travel all the time for work. What if something happens to you? This way, I can step in and keep things running." I stared at her for a long moment, letting the silence stretch. Because this was it. Mona had just played her final card. The move that meant she was done pretending. She was fully expecting to own my company. She thought the wedding had sealed the deal. She thought the prenup didn't matter. She thought she had won, and so I smiled. Not a big smile, just enough for her to think I was hesitating. Then I exhaled and said, "You're right. Let's talk about it soon." Mona grinned, leaning over to kiss my cheek. "I knew you'd come around, babe." Then she left, and I sat back in my chair and checked my watch, because the final phase of my plan was about to begin. That night, I made 2 phone calls, one to my lawyer, one to the bank. The first was to set everything in motion. The second, to make sure Mona had no access to any new credit lines under my name. And then, I waited, because Mona was about to learn a very, very painful lesson. Marriage didn't mean automatic wealth, and a prenup wasn't just a piece of paper. And the best part, she was still laughing, still spending, still gloating, still convinced she was untouchable. That is, until the day she walked into court, and the judge read the prenup out loud. Mona was riding high, spending like crazy while acting like she was already the queen of my business empire. But what she didn't know, she was about to crash, and I was the one holding the wheel. It started small. Mona began casually dropping hints about wanting access to my financials. "It'd be easier if I had the login to your business account, babe, just for emergencies. I should probably have a company credit card, right? I mean, I'm your wife. What if I started helping with the business? I could take some pressure off you." Each time, I pretended to consider it, nodding along, acting like she was chipping away at my defenses. Because the more she believed she had me wrapped around her finger, the harder it was going to be when everything flipped. Then, one evening, she made her boldest move yet. I had just come home from work when she sat me down holding a folder. Inside, business ownership documents. She had gone ahead and drawn up legal paperwork, documents that would make her a co-owner of my company. "I already spoke to a lawyer," she said smoothly, flashing that self-satisfied smirk I was starting to hate. "It's just a formality. Once we sign, it'll protect both of us." I picked up the papers, flipping through them like I was actually considering it. Then I looked at her and asked, "You already talked to a lawyer?" She nodded, sipping her wine like she had already won. And in that moment, I knew. She wasn't just waiting to take my money, she was already planning her exit. That night, while Mona was upstairs taking one of her endless bubble baths, I did what I should have done weeks ago. I went through her laptop. Now, before anyone jumps in, I didn't hack anything. Mona wasn't exactly a cybersecurity genius. Her password? Her own damn birthday. And there it was. Emails. Dozens of them. With a divorce lawyer. She had started consulting him 3 weeks before our wedding. The subject lines alone told me everything. Timeline for securing assets after marriage. How long do I have to stay before filing? Can a prenup be thrown out in court? And the one that made my blood run cold? What happens if my husband doesn't see it coming? I stared at the screen, gripping the desk so hard my knuckles turned white. Mona wasn't waiting years to divorce me. She was going to blindside me as soon as she thought she could get the biggest payout, and she thought I was too stupid to notice. I closed the laptop, took a deep breath, and smiled to myself. Because now, it was time to drop the hammer. The next morning, I did 2 things. I went to my lawyer. I handed over everything. The emails, the financial records, even her own words about the prenup being just a piece of paper. My lawyer grinned. "Oh, this is going to be fun." I filed for divorce. Not just any divorce, a controlled, strategic, scorched earth divorce that would leave her with nothing. And the best part? I didn't tell her. Because Mona thought she was going to be the one to walk into court and take everything from me. She thought she was going to win. But she was about to learn. The game was over before she even knew she was playing. A lot of people might wonder why I went through with the wedding. And honestly, I've asked myself the same question. Looking back now, I can see everything clearly. Every red flag, every manipulative move, every little sign that should have told me exactly who Mona really was. But back then, I was in love. Or at least, I thought I was. Mona had always been two different people. The woman she showed me in the beginning, the woman I fell for, was warm, affectionate, and supportive. She made me feel like I had finally found someone who understood me, someone who genuinely cared. She wasn't just my fiancée, she was my best friend. Or at least, that's what I believed. Yes, I saw glimpses of entitlement. Yes, there were moments where she acted like my money was already hers. But I convinced myself that marriage would change her. I told myself she was just used to a privileged lifestyle, that she didn't understand the value of hard work, but she would, in time. I thought once we were truly committed, she would realize that marriage wasn't about taking, it was about building a life together. But that was the lie I told myself. Because the truth? She was never going to change. And once I saw her for who she really was, everything became clear. The morning of the divorce hearing, Mona strutted in like she had already won. She was wearing designer everything, looking like she had already spent the money she thought she was about to get. Her lawyer was smirking, probably expecting me to settle out of court to make things easy. She didn't even look at me, because in her mind I was already nothing to her. I just sat back, calm, watching the clock. Because Mona was about to have the worst day of her life. The judge took his seat, looked over the documents, and then, with zero emotion, started reading the prenup out loud. No business ownership, no access to assets acquired before marriage. No spousal support, and if she contested it, she paid my legal fees. I watched Mona's face shift. First came confusion, then panic. She turned to her lawyer expecting him to fix this, but he was just flipping through the paperwork, his smirk slowly disappearing. That's when Mona whispered, too loud for the quiet courtroom. "Wait, what?" The judge glanced up, unimpressed. "You signed this willingly, Miss Carter." Mona's head whipped toward me, her mouth slightly open. "Jackson?" Her voice was suddenly shaky. You said this was just a formality." I just smiled. "That's just how marriage works, babe." Mona stood up so fast her chair scraped against the floor. "This isn't fair. He tricked me." The judge sighed. "Miss Carter, please sit down." But she wasn't done. She started arguing with her lawyer. She tried claiming she was pressured into signing. She demanded the judge throw it out. None of it worked. The judge finally shut her down with one sentence. "Miss Carter, this is a legally binding contract. Your failure to read it is not the court's concern." Boom. That was the moment she knew. She wasn't just walking away empty-handed. She was walking away humiliated. Just when she thought it couldn't get worse, my lawyer handed over one last document. A breakdown of every lavish purchase she had made under my name in the past few months. Expenses she now owed me back. Her total debt? Nearly $85,000. And because of the contest clause in the prenup, if she tried to fight it, she'd be paying my legal fees too. Mona lost it. She started yelling, demanding the judge reverse everything. She accused me of tricking her into marriage. She even turned to me, desperation in her voice. "Jackson, please, let's talk about this." But me? I just stood up, buttoned my suit, and walked out, leaving her screaming behind me. She had spent months laughing behind my back, thinking she was setting me up. But in the end, she had played herself. I didn't answer any of Mona's calls after that day in court. I knew she'd try to spin this in her favor, try to manipulate me into working something out, but I had no reason to listen. She had made her bed, and now she was about to lie in it, alone. It took less than 24 hours for Mona to realize just how bad things were. At first, she tried acting calm. She sent a sweet, apologetic text, as if we had just had a minor disagreement. "Jackson, I think we should talk. I overreacted, and I know you didn't mean to hurt me. We don't have to let things end like this. Let's be adults and figure this out." I didn't respond. 5 hours later, a second text came in, angrier. "Ignoring me isn't going to change anything. You should be grateful I wanted to build a life with you. You're not as special as you think you are, Jackson." Still, I said nothing. That's when she started calling my friends. Evan sent me a screenshot from Mona where she pretended to be heartbroken, telling him I had blindsided her and that she just wanted closure. "She's trying to play the victim," Evan wrote. "I told her to go for self." Good man. A week later, Mona's real nightmare began. She had spent the last 5 years living off her parents' money, and more recently mine. She had never once worried about bills, credit scores, or debt. And now, she was drowning. Her first move? Running back to mommy and daddy. Except this time, they weren't buying it. Her parents were humiliated. The divorce was public knowledge, and their social circle had already started gossiping. Her dad, who once adored me, called me personally to apologize for her behavior, and her mom didn't even pick up the phone when Mona called. I later heard through mutual connections that Mona had been cut off completely. She had burned through her inheritance, assuming she'd never need to be responsible with money. And now, she was on her own for the first time in her life. If there was one thing Mona valued more than money, it was status. And once word spread about how badly she played herself, her friends turned on her instantly. I saw it happen in real time. One day her social media was filled with lavish brunches, shopping trips, and weekend getaways. The next, radio silence. The same girls who used to hype her up, who called her a queen and cheered on her glow up, were nowhere to be found. Because the thing about fake people, they stick around when you're winning. But the second you start losing, they scatter like rats on a sinking ship. The humiliation. The final blow came when Mona was forced to downgrade her lifestyle. She moved out of her luxury apartment, the one she had picked, assuming I'd be paying for it, and ended up in a small, basic rental in a much less glamorous part of town. She had to sell her designer bags just to cover her debts. She even tried getting a job, except, surprise, she had no actual skills. I heard through the grapevine that she applied for some low-level marketing gig and didn't even make it past the first interview. The best part? She had to delete her Instagram. Because every time she posted something, people would flood her comments, asking her, "Didn't you try to scam your ex-husband? How's that prenup treating you, babe? Not so rich now, huh?" And just like that, the Mona Carter persona, the elite, glamorous, untouchable woman she had pretended to be, was dead. While Mona was scrambling to fix her wrecked life, I was doing better than ever. I had peace, I had money, I had zero stress, and the best part? I had the perfect story to tell every guy I met. You want to know why you always get a prenup? Let me tell you about my ex-wife Mona. And trust me, every single one of them took notes. I knew Mona would try one last move before she fully accepted her new reality. And sure enough, one evening, months after the divorce, she called me. At first I wasn't going to pick up, but then I thought, why not? I wanted to hear it. I wanted to hear what rock bottom sounded like, so I answered. Her voice was different now. No arrogance, no smugness, just quiet desperation. "Jackson." I said nothing, let the silence stretch. Finally she spoke again, voice trembling. "Can we talk?" I leaned back, keeping my tone flat. "About what?" I made mistakes. I know that now, and I miss you. Can we meet?" There it was, her last card. She had lost everything else, so now she was trying to play on my past feelings, trying to see if the man she had once manipulated so easily was still there. I almost laughed. I kept my voice calm, controlled. "Mona, why would I ever go back to someone who saw me as a paycheck?" She sucked in a sharp breath. "It wasn't like that, Jackson. I loved you." I tilted my head. "Loved me?" Then I chuckled. "That's funny, because I remember you telling your friends I was just a stepping stone." Silence. She had nothing to say to that. Then finally a whisper. "I don't know what to do." That's when I delivered the final blow. "That's not my problem, Mona," and I hung up. Just like that. She had used me, discarded me, laughed at me behind my back, and now she was the one left behind. After that call, I never heard from her again. She faded into the background, just another broke, irrelevant socialite who played her cards wrong. No more luxury lifestyle, no more high-status friends, just a bitter, humiliated woman who realized, far too late, that she had destroyed her own future. As for me, life was better than ever. My business, thriving. My peace of mind, untouchable. My money, right where it belonged, with me. And the best part? I never had to hear the name Mona Carter again. Because while she was struggling to survive, I was moving forward, happier, wealthier, and completely free. I date? Sure. But now, I see red flags from a mile away. I don't ignore them. I don't make excuses. And most importantly, I don't let anyone get close enough to think they can take what's mine. Because if there's one thing Mona Carter taught me, it's that some people aren't looking for love. They're looking for a payday. And the next woman who tries, she'll learn real fast. I don't fall for that shit anymore.